Hello, it's John Heaton, and today I'm going to have a go at coming up with a George Harrison compilation to cover the Dark Horse years, which this album tried to do back in the day. I actually don't have a lot of time for this album. I mean, it's a terrible cover, for one. The back cover's pretty awful as well. Really difficult to read the track listing on the back. And there's 14 tracks chosen, and I've come up with a double album of 20 tracks, and only 5 tracks are in common with this album, so that tells you something. I'm not sure what. But anyway, this video was triggered by just me looking at some of the recent releases from the George Harrison estate. And there's loads of coloured vinyl coming out, of course, and there's re-releases of various albums of his on the Dark Horse label, which I think are both quite superfluous. I noticed Elton John's released his first five albums on splattered coloured vinyl, which I don't see much point in doing. Obviously the deluxe Material World was a delight. Deluxe All Things Must Pass less so because it was so expensive, but I thought it'd be quite fun to have a go at coming up with a Dark Horse compilation, and I've gone for a double album because it's so difficult to narrow it down. And you might say, why haven't I done his whole career? Well, I always look in George's solo career in sort of 3 areas: the Apple years, and even the songbook divides the Apple years from the Dark Horse years, maybe for publishing reasons or something. But that covers 1970 through 75, and then the Dark Horse years 76 to 89, and then Brainwashed, which came out a year after he died in 2002. I've always sort of looked upon that as a kind of standalone collection, and I find it a bit strange that George didn't see fit to release any of those tracks in his lifetime, because his last proper solo album in his lifetime was 1987, and then nothing for the last 14 years. I know he's suffering from ill health and stuff, but just the fact that Brainwashed album is posthumous makes me not quite regard it as sort of core catalogue, if you like. But anyway, so I've basically chosen the same source material as this album had to choose from. So we're talking 33 1/3, self-titled, Somewhere in England, Gone Troppo, Cloud 9, and a couple of singles, and that's it. So you'll notice when I show you the track listing at the end, as I go through the tracks, there's a lot of singles which were on this album, Best of George, Best of Dark Horse, which I've omitted. And it's because I don't particularly like the tracks, and or I've got bored of them over the years, and maybe I won't mention them now. You'll see as we go through, but I've counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 singles which didn't make my cut, and of which 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 did make this blue album. So anyway, 14 tracks, and let's get going. Got the track listing here somewhere, so I'll start off with side 1, and I've opened the album with All Those Years Ago. This is the picture single which I have. I've got 2 picture singles. This is the colour, this is the black and white or greenish tint. Successful single number 2 in the US, number 14 in the UK, something like that. Just a great track, and probably the best, one of the best 3 tracks on Somewhere in England, and a good way to open the album. A very slightly incongruous sort of happy melody which doesn't quite match the words, which are obviously a tribute to John Lennon, who just died a few months earlier. But that's fairly minor criticism. It's a nice song with nice diminished chords throughout, and there's no proper video to go with it, which is a shame, but yeah, it's a top-notch George track and a good way to open this album. And then number 2, we've got the Blow Away single from the self-titled, which I expected to be a huge hit, and obviously I was massively disappointed when it only got to number 51. It was, I'm happy to say, more successful in the US, where it reached top 20 at least. Not quite the top 10, I don't think. But it's a superb track, and deserved to do better. I think, as Bob Woofenden said in his book, The Beatles Apart, if this album, self-titled, had come out at the beginning of the decade as opposed to the end of the decade, it would have been a huge hit. But when it did come out, I remember it was flying in the face of a lot of new wave stuff, and it just appeared very laid back. And this book, The Beatles Graphic, which is highly recommended, but written originally in the French language. This is an English translation, and he does delightful little drawings throughout, and this is his drawing of the George Harrison self-titled, and he's got quite an amusing review here. I won't read you all of it, but it says, even his single Faster, a tribute to the Formula One racing that he adores, runs at only 50 kilometers an hour. So he's basically saying the album's too slow, which, and one review I seem to remember saying it's so laid back, he's almost horizontal. Anyway, I love it. So number 3 on side 1, we've got That's the Way It Goes from Gon Troppo, and it's just a superb track, great bass vocals from Willie Green, and number 4, Go Back to the Self-Titled album, and Soft Touch, which is actually the B-side of this single, and it's just a glorious track. I think someone in the studio was saying they quite liked the old song, is it Deep Blue, or one of those early tracks? No, it was Run of the Mill, that's it, with the horn line at the end. And so George wrote the song Soft Touch based around that horn line at the end of Run of the Mill. It's a great track. That's What It Takes is closing side 1 from Cloud 9. I think it's just about the best track on the album. I love it. And great backing vocals from Jeff Lynne. And then side 2 will open with the first contribution from 33 1/3, Women Don't You Cry For Me. Great funky track, good bass, good drums, Alvin Taylor on drums. I forget who plays the bass. It'll come to me in a minute. But If You Believe from the self-titled, the great closer, co-written with Gary Wright, is next on side 2. Willie Weeks plays the bass on 33 1/3, just remembered. That Which I Have Lost, we're going back to the Summer in England album now, and it was a track which replaced the 4 tracks which the record company said ditch because they said they weren't commercial enough. So he replaced the 4 tracks, Lay His Head, Flying Hour, Sat Singing in Tears of the World, with all those years ago, Teardrops, That Which I Have Lost, and Blood from a Clone. And That Which I Have Lost is a delightful song with a great solo. Beautiful Girl, we're going back to 33 1/3, wonderful tribute to Olivia, his wife, his soon-to-be wife at the time. Lovely tune, lovely guitar. Love Comes to Everyone, back to self-titled, another love song. And lovely single, didn't do anything, unfortunately. I remember when it came out and hearing it on the radio, and it didn't sound au courant, but not that there's anything wrong with that. But at the time, I could see why it wasn't a hit. Now, moving to side 3 of this hypothetical double vinyl album, which, by the way, I've called That's the Way It Goes. I think that's about the best title I could come up with. Poor Little Girl, it was a 1989 single, and I love it to bits. It's got ELO written all over it, although the production credit is actually not credited to Jeff Lynne, but he's obviously playing on the track, and he's all over the kind of touch and feel of it. So Dear One, back to 33 1/3, the second track on side 1, is the second track on side 3 of my hypothetical album, and it's a lovely track. This Is Love, we're going to Cloud 9, and this was a single, and I've included it, and this will please James Griffiths because I know he loves this track. I just haven't got bored of this track over the years, where I've got bored of When We Was Fab, and certainly got bored of Got My Mind Set on You. So I think This Is Love is a delightful number, good production. Mystical one, we're going to Gon Troppo again, and this is just about the best track on the album, along with That's the Way It Goes. First track, side 2, lovely song, lovely song. Your Love Is Forever, we're going back to George Harrison again, and just a lovely ballad. And this was the B-side of Faster single here, which I have. Faster single didn't do anything, unfortunately. And so side 4, we're going to go back to Cloud 9 and Fish in the Sand. Lovely upbeat number. And then Dark Sweet Lady, back to self-titled. Another lovely tribute to Olivia. Someplace Else, back to Cloud 9, lovely ballad. And Faster from self-titled, which as I mentioned was a single, didn't do anything, unfortunately, but it's a great song with very sort of philosophical lyrics about jealousy and wishing people would get on with each other instead of being always sort of trying to top each other, that kind of sentiment. And then I finished the album with a track from Somewhere in England, The Writings on the Wall. I just love it. I think it was the B-side of all those years ago, I think. It's just a wonderful lyric and a wonderful sentiment and a sort of hidden gem in George's catalogue. So this is my track listing, and hope you enjoyed the video, and I'm sure your track listing would be different, and that's fine. Bubbling Under not quite made this list, but could have done with Flying Hour, one of the rejected tracks from Somewhere in England, and Lay His Head was close as well. And what else? Soft-Hearted Hannah was quite close as well. But anyway, that was my little bit of fun with the George Harrison double album compilation for the Dark Horse years. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.